Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on today? I've been planning or trying to do this video for about a week or so. You know what I mean? My, Let me pause myself in the background here. Microsoft, was it before? Was it before Gamescom or after Gamescom that they had the hot tip?
I think it was before. I think it was a little bit before, around the same time. Yeah,
it was right around the same time.
Okay, whatever. So when Microsoft, they had the hot chips event. Basically, what that is, they explain they tear the Xbox One down more or less, and they explain what's in it. You know what I mean, the transistors and all that tech stuff. You know what I mean? In post up, and you guys, you read it. Like I said, we'll look at the rules. Shout out to everybody that's in the chat. You guys would be so kind to hit the like button. Should be a very interesting. What's going on, Tony Salty's Gaming? Shout out to all you guys, man. My man said, "Who to say they bug and stay tuned for more." Flip money. But anyway, getting right into it. Post. Talk to me. What's going on inside the Xbox One? They broke down the SoCs. Now, for those that they may not know, what is the SoC? Like, what are they used for, or what is it? A lot of people may not know.
It's basically a system on a chip. It's basically a chip that combines the CPU, which is the central processing unit, along with the GPU, which is a graphics processing unit, and it puts both of these chips. It's combined both of them into a single chip. Now, Hot Chips broke it down. Give you some fun factors here. The chip is actually smaller than the original chip that was in the Xbox One. I know the Xbox One chip was 363 square millimeters with 5 billion transistors. This chip is 7 billion transistors, and there's only 359 square millimeters in regards to the die size. Now, they did explain things that we already know, like the 12 gigabytes of GDR memory, the 326 gigabyte per second bandwidth, but the peak bandwidth, as far as what they was able to peak in the lab doing testing, was only 285 gigabytes per second on that memory bandwidth. But Microsoft still say that's enough bandwidth right there. The developers might not need even all of that to get the 4K type of games that they're trying to get to. Other things is like the GPU has like 4 shader arrays, which contains 11 CUs. One out of each shader array is disabled for redundancy and yield. So you got 10 active CPUs per shader array, which comes out to 40 CUs, compute units, as they say. Yeah, but other than that, the raw performance of the GPU is a little bit over 6 teraflops. The CPU is 31% faster clockwise compared to the Xbox One S. It pretty much runs twice the speed of the original PS4 CPU. So you're looking at an overall boost over the Xbox One S CPU wise, somewhere up in there like a 72% performance boost over the Xbox One S that you're getting from the Xbox One X. Also, it's effectively 900 megahertz faster than the Pro CPU because it's simply better per clock speed.
Okay. Okay. Well, Master, you're in here. So, listen, I'm sorry. I'm such a horrible host. Today I got with me the real masculine, and of course my man Post Up. You there, Mas?
Yes, sir.
Did you? Of course, you sent me the article. What are your thoughts about this? Now, listen, before you give me your answer, I was given something about a year ago, before E3, and I said that Microsoft's next console. Actually, let me stop being so they may go dumpster diving and find the damn thing. I put out so many videos. Basically, that I was saying that Microsoft's new console will come out in 2017. I had was given some memos or whatever the case, some documents, but basically Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo I mean, Intel. They used this one Taiwanese company that makes the SoC chips for all of them, and they had put out a statement to their investors that says they have a new contract for a major company, a gaming company that's releasing they're releasing a console in 2017, and they was talking about now the original Xbox One was on how many millimeters? Was 10 or 14 or
nanometer? It was a 14 nanometer chip.
And the Xbox One X was 10 now. Is it
Yeah.
13, okay. But also today was I guess was after 10 was going to maybe be 8. But what's your thoughts about the actual specs inside of the Xbox One X, and how does it really, besides being a bit more powerful or having a more powerful GPU, how does it different than the PS4 Pro?
Basically, like, to break it down, the chip itself, the reason it's a Jaguar derivative instead of a Zen architecture,
yes,
Vega, that type of media boost, is more than likely because they started developing it so early. And even according to like the AMD interim specs, all of the new processors that are out, they weren't finalized. That's why I had so many code problems when they dropped. So what they did was they took the architecture that was existing and they made what we call Frankenstein.
Yeah, because they got some Vega in there too.
Yeah, they took a little bit of everything that they could at the time, all the processors, the drop speeds, all that stuff, and they put it into one cluster. And the genius part of the Scorpio engine is that each individual process is boosted by the process before it. Just like the DirectX 12 module that's in the chip. That it works with not just DirectX 12. Like, it'll boost DirectX 12 itself at a much greater rate just because it's built on that system code. But for all operations, what the DirectX 12 processor does, basically, to break this down, is it sends a code from the GPU to the CPU at a much faster rate of speed. It basically makes up for the ESRAM buffer that they were doing before. And think of it like, instead of the GPU telling the CPU laugh out loud and spelling out laugh out loud, it says LOL. But the CPU will understand it as laugh out loud and will process it as such. So,
like, shorthand.
Yeah, it'll shorthand every single command. So it's basically like sending a quick test message, LOL, I heart you, instead of laugh out loud, I love you. But the CPU will process it in its full form, even though it got a shorthanded message. That allows one side to get with the other and boost the speed at which it turns over these processes, which will allow a lot more things to happen quickly. So to take off the load that's normally on the CPU. And the reason, like Post was saying, where they tested it up to 285 instead of 326, that's nominal that they said. It won't get up to 285 because what'll happen is either a game will be intensely CPU bound or it'll be intensely GPU bound by that point, before it gets to the point where it needs to process that much information at the same time. It'll get to one render setting or the other before it gets up to that. So that it gives it plenty of headroom, which is why they got rid of the ESRAM and went with this just massive cache in order to move information from one side to the other. The way they've done it is pretty ingenious when you think about the amount of time it takes for one command to enter and exit, and as a full command, it's leaps and bounds above the Xbox One and the PS4 and PS4 Pro. Even the Pro just was a boost. Like, they basically just overclocked the chip and the same chip that was in there before, and they said, here you go. The Scorpio engine is its own amalgamation of the technology. It's not something that you can go out and buy and just overclock. It is basically them taking everything that they had available to them and making it cohesively run.
And not only that though, they have dedicated hardware in there for draw calls and what he was saying about the instructions. So you're relieving the CPU of not only does the DX12 take it to shorthand, you got dedicated hardware in there to take care of the draw calls and to relieve the CPU of that stress. You know what I'm saying? And that's another way of freeing up probably the bottlenecks that they saw when they was testing out all the engines. Another thing they did was with the caches. The caches, I know the caches is kind of a little bit complicated to get into.
The best way I can explain a cache is it's a bank where it's like Fort Knox. All the money comes to this bank and it's stored as one single set of information. Then as like you press a button or you enter a new area, the cache sends a translation of whatever you're trying to do in the game. So you're trying to jump, the cache from one section or the other of the chip will say, here goes the money to get accomplished what you want. So it's a bank where all the information is stored, and the way they access it, like it just in the improvement in how they access the access speeds based on the translation because of how they derive the chips and how they put everything in succession is what makes the chip much faster than it looks on paper. Because on paper it looks fast, but as a practicality, you can go, instead of going through the vault, going into the bank doors, going through the vault, and then getting the manager, waiting for him to come down, open the doors, you just walk straight into the vault through the back door. That's more or less how it works. So you can access the money quickly.
Exactly, because prior to the 80s, if you CPU and main memory didn't have caches, right? And the main memory was extremely slow, and the CPU wasn't that much faster. So they had to come up with a way to kind of reduce that speed, and that's where you get caches. It allows the cache store is the next thing that the CPU should get. You know what I'm saying? So I told you, we're gonna get real technical. So let me kind of elaborate for the list. So all the caches there is to mitigate fetching memory from the main RAM. Okay, it takes more clock cycles to fetch memory from the main RAM than it does from fetching it faster from the cache. Okay, so 95% of the time you're dealing with data and results in small isolated chunks. You don't need all the information about the game at your fingertips. So take, for example, say you wanted to add 2 numbers, right, and store that. And you add another 2 numbers and then times that to ties them 2 results together. So you got like X equal A plus B times C plus D. Okay, you'll need another variable to store the results of A plus B and another variable to store the results of C plus D. Okay, all this intermediate results require a memory address. Okay, which reference a specific memory location used at various levels of the software or the hardware. Okay, it's faster to store them locally in the cache, which might take 1 or 2 clock cycles to grab, than the main memory, which might take 4 or 5 cycles. So that's where a lot of when Microsoft said they was making the changes in regards to the engine, them cache hits, a cache miss weighs heavy on the CPU. It means that if that certain address is not within that box, then the CPU got to go find it. And if it got to go into the memory, the main memory, or if it got to even go to the disk, it could take about 5, 6, 7, 10, even up to like 20 cycles. And right there, you got everything else is just waiting because the CPU is trying to find this address. So Microsoft cleaned all that shit up. This chip right here is super efficient for developer coding in regards to games, man. This thing is a beast.
Yeah, it's like what I'm trying to think of it. Okay, like the cache broken down, the bank analogy I use is like It's like you have a man cave or whatever, right? Instead of having to go down to the fridge in your kitchen to get a beer, you got a fridge in your man cave. That's basically what the cache is.
Yep.
You have it closer to you and easier to access. And the way they designed the entire chip is so that not only does each individual process know where it's stored, but it moves it into a position where you can grab that cold beer out the fridge next to you.
And that fridge is bigger than it was before now.
Yeah. Right.
It's bigger than it was.
Let me ask you a question then. All right, because I got some people. So you guys are way over my head. I thought I'm person. So, in layman's terms, okay, what does all this mean for developers and them using this towards games or making games, or is it? Because we starting to see some things from Digital Foundry. Like one game they showed, they caught my really was Gears, and again I have a 4K TV, HDR, all that stuff. On the Xbox One S. And is this what we have to look forward to going forward, like far as games? You know what I mean? And why is that? Is it the assets or is it the rest? Like, explain, you know, the difference between the two. Like, what do we have going on here? You know what I mean?
Basically, Microsoft has built a system that's as efficient as possible, the most efficient system as possible in regards to this chip, for machines that's running game codes. So everybody who's saying that it's a Jaguar chip is automatically trash. Nah, it just don't work like that. And we understand that the issues that the Jaguar chip has had in the past, but the changes that they made in the Scorpio, when people saying, "Oh, the CPU can't handle that," the CPU, nah. This thing, this chip is pretty powerful. The changes that they made in the CPU, it shouldn't you won't see games struggle with that 60 frames per second. Now, big open world games, probably so if the code becomes really CPU heavy. But as Maslin was saying a couple shows ago, a lot of the new engines are pretty much GPU bound, and not only that, this is a full DX12 box. I mean, every feature, all additional wham bams that comes with DX12, this box has. Okay, so as more games or more game engines become GPU bound, and they're using DirectX 12 as their renderer, and then depending on the CPU, whatever they can, you're gonna get games running at 4K 60 frames per second without a hitch. I think if you look at Destiny, I think Destiny is using an old engine.
Okay. Okay. We did the Broadband Bullies. If you guys can see, we have the Broadband Bullies podcast. I just made it public. It's from a few days. You can go back on my channel and watch it. And that is one of the things that we talked about, that we covered on the show. I forgot we even went over that on the show about Destiny, saying that these consoles are not strong enough to achieve 60 frames per second in Destiny. He said because of the worlds. But and again, I'm not claiming to be a dev or whatever, but that was the same excuse they gave for Destiny 1. What they said was because it was on the PS3 and the 360. They could, they couldn't, get to 60 frames, basically the same game. But my thing is this, though. I don't recall Bungie ever making a game or an engine that's in 60 frames. But even if you say it's still too demanding for the single player aspect, what about the multiplayer aspect of the game? You know what I mean? And again, we're talking about the Xbox One X. I understand it has a very, very, customizable Jaguar core, but it's not really whatever the case. And plus, again, it has the DirectX 12 there, right during the motherboard. Like what's going on? You know what I mean? Like,
that's just Bungie blowing smoke, because like I said, their excuse, and it made it worse when they made the excuse that you would have less AI and extracurriculars happening on screen, like ships flying in and all that stuff. Okay, that's cool. So why isn't it 60 in multiplayer? Because all that is player versus player. There's no AI. There's no ships flying in the background. There's no extracurricular things happening. It's just people shooting at each other in a localized environment.
Yeah.
That's when everything they said became bullshit. Because if the reason you don't have it at 60 in the single player is because of all the extracurricular stuff, that's fine. Make it 60 in multiplayer. It's not that they can't handle it. It's that you didn't do it because you're built like the way Bungie is built is to make the games a certain way. They're in that ecosystem of how to make their games. Bungie knows how to make games. Not going to deny that. But they are so comfortable in making the same type of games that they have yet to really evolve their style. And good, bad, whatever. Like even Destiny 1, the similarities to Halo fundamentally are there because that is how they design their games, and that carried over to Destiny 1. Even playing Destiny 2 on PC, I played it yesterday. It plays fundamentally the exact same way because they're very used to doing a certain thing a certain way. Yeah. And the PC version, even unlocked, has a interim like stuttering problem. Like my rig can run this thing 4K 60 with ease, like easy, but it'll still do this jumping thing where the frame pacing is all over the place. And I played it on my main rig, which has a Titan or two dual Titans in my main rig. So like I said, 4K 60 easy. Then I played in my editing rig, which is R7 or Ryzen 7 1700 and a 1080. Easily should be able to run it at 1440p 60 plus. Easy, but it had a buffer gap where it just kept going up, and then it would peak out at certain entrances and then drop, then up, peak out, and it would do that over and over again because that is how the game is designed. That's why the engine that they're running is backwards for how games are made nowadays. Yeah. And what's going to happen is sooner or later, they're either going to have to come out with a Destiny 3 in 3 years that has a new engine that's specifically built, because now they got 6 years to build an engine that's specifically built for how games are being made now, process speeds that are happening now, and the GPU modifications that they are doing. Or we're going to end up in the same situation where we come to the next set and you have all these games at 4K 60 because Gears, Titanfall, Forza, like games are 4K 60. Gears has a whole bunch of AI, whole bunch of particle effects. I'm sorry, not Gears. Titanfall has a whole bunch of AI, has a whole bunch of particle effects. Like, you need to be able to play the games that you have a certain way, and in order for Bungie to evolve, they have to evolve their engine. They have to get out of the I can make this way and make sure it runs, as opposed to I can make this better. Because that's why people are having such a hard time with Destiny 2, is because it plays so much like Destiny 1.
And not only that, though, in Titanfall 2, it's GPU bound. It's strictly GPU bound, and it only goes to the CPU when too much stuff is happening on the screen. And that's what a lot of gamers have to understand. A lot of times, it's not that the systems are incapable. It's that some of these engines probably still running DX9 based, running DX10, DX11. These old engines needs to be brought into the new age of development. And once that happened, and Phil said this a while ago, there aren't any DX12 based engines out there, and it's going to be a while before you even see them, because they didn't exist. And DX12, it's based off, it's GPU heavy, but it also allows you to stretch things across multiple cores. You got 8 cores, and you got some of these old engines just putting everything on one core, and the other 7 cores ain't doing nothing, just watching the one core go to work. So in case of course you're gonna get some bottleneck if you got 8 cores and only 1 core is doing the brunt of the work in regards to the CPU. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of these engines got to be brought into the new age. And once you see that, even from a PS4 Pro perspective, you're going to see a lot of performance gains. But in regards to the Xbox One X, man, you're going to see, man, better graphics, better texture, longer draw distance, smoother frame rates, not only for new games, but for existing games, even your back compatible. And another thing I saw in the hot chip is that for people who think Microsoft is not doing VR, that HDMI port support 2-stream SMT, meaning multiple display, meaning that the Xbox One X is already future built to support VR and AR, because the HDMI port on there can support multiple displays.
Oh, okay. Well, damn. Well, now you don't.
And there's rumblings. There's rumblings. This from just people I know, but there's rumblings about Microsoft getting with HTC, because HTC is trying to sell out Vive. So there's very small rumblings. It's very small. Like this is minute. So, but this is just.
Are you serious?
Dead serious. HTC is trying to sell off the Vive. So there's rumblings, real small rumblings, real small. Like, I don't want to get anybody hopes up. I'm just saying there's real small rumblings amongst people I know that are saying that Microsoft has a itch.
Yeah, that's the step they would. That would
have Acer with the Asus with the visor. I think they named it now. HP, and they have 2 other headsets that are VR, AR / and those things, once they fully roll over the DX12 thing, or not the Redmond update to everyone, like once they fully roll that over and everything is Windows 10 based completely, I think we'll start hearing more about VR, AR on Xbox, just because it's one of those things that you can move from one side to the other pretty easily once you have that code base in. It's the same reason Path of Exile. The Path of Exile dev said in an interview yesterday or day before that the reason that they went with Xbox One instead of PS4 was simply because they can make an update for both the Windows version and the Xbox
at one time,
at the same time, which is exactly what's their whole Windows 10 on everything process.
And the work they doing on Xbox actually made the PC version better in the process. It's even like with Ark Survival, when they was saying they was going to remove the host barrier from the Xbox version, because now they can load the whole map into memory. Not, you know what I'm saying? They weren't able to do that with the Xbox and the PS4. I don't think they're able to do it on the Pro either, because it does. But with the Xbox One X version, they're able to load the whole map into memory and still give you, I think it's 1080p 60 frames per second with all them graphical capabilities. Man, Z, we got some great years ahead of us with this machine, man. People ain't even seen what this thing is capable of, but I'm telling you, man, this thing is a beast.
Oh, okay. Well, again, there's just some people just joined. Like I said, we're going over the Microsoft hot chips. Basically, where it was some time where they explained the SoCs and what's in the console. Because what's crazy, again, not to get too long, this is your guys' show here. I'm just I'm like somebody in the panel. I was wondering why Microsoft spent over, I think it was $1.34 billion, whatever the case with AMD, and to come out with the weaker hardware compared to the PS4 Pro. Sony spent about, the PS4 period. I think Sony spent about $400 million, and Microsoft spent like $1.7 billion with AMD. So I was wondering, how could they come up with the weaker console and spend that much money? But again, I didn't know that spanned several SoCs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was crazy, right? when I had when the Church of Next Gen had his mental breakdown, right? Like I said, I do nothing by accident, right? Even though I can go over the top and say it's for entertainment, but I said a few things there that was told to me. Like sometimes I'm privy to things. I mean, I met people. You guys just started doing. You're gonna meet people too. That's just the way that it is. But I said this. I said that even with these mid-generation, what do you call it, mid-fresh or whatever the case, mid-generation, mid-fresh, okay? That's not done by chance. Once, or you wouldn't tell anything. Once the Xbox One X starts in production now, they've already said the new console has a code name. They don't just put out one and just wait. They already get to work on the following console.
Yeah.
What happened last generation, that 8 to 9 year life cycle, it was very unhealthy. You know what I mean? Both because if you don't know, some of you guys are a little younger. Normally, when consoles came out, they were ahead of PCs. But even the 360 was ahead of PC when it came out, than the PS3. But even back then, things was more CPU heavy. You know what I mean? But the architecture has changed. But now, like I said, that 8 or 9 years that took for these new consoles for the Xbox One and the PS4, they probably would never catch. We get what's the GTX 1080s up to now, 11 T-flops or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
So this was the way or the answer for Microsoft and Sony to maybe try to bridge the gap a little bit and still make money in the process. You know what I mean? My question is to you guys, and then we kind of talked about this a little bit yesterday on BGST, and I also told you guys this. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Well, not you guys, but I was saying this last year. I said again, they act like I was my man, like what they building the art. It was crazy as hell. Tell about this flood was coming, right? You understand that the arguments, well, not arguments. We used to go back and forth on BGST about this stuff. No one believed me, right? But anyway, I said once the X got announced, right? With Scorpio, you know what I mean, 60 flops. I said I don't expect. Anyone should expect for Sony to to go 5-6 years, whatever the case is, getting their teeth kicked in. I mean, that's not the way that the business is. They have to compete. And if not, they become, like you said, like it's one thing about Nintendo when I watched, he kept honest. He said when it comes to competing now, Nintendo does horrible at competing. So again, when would you guys expect to see something new from Sony? Now, mind you, we just call these are mid-gen refreshes. So, and would it be wise again for Sony to say, hey, to try to release a PlayStation 5 in 2 years? I mean, so this is a two-part question. You say maybe in what year? In 2017, maybe in 2 years. And do you think the PS5, or even if you're still doing generations, do you think it will be both forwards and backwards compatible, or will start all over again? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
You want to go for?
Yeah, I'll go first. I think it'll be 2020. More likely is what I'm thinking, just because right now Sony is so comfortably in the lead, and the way they do things is they don't go out of their way to grab new marketed technology like Microsoft does and create stuff. Like the Xbox One Scorpio's engine is something that Microsoft created in conjunction with AMD. Sony uses their R&D, quote unquote, to take existing technology and put it in a package. Like the PS4 was all off the shelf parts put into a package. And they just so happened to change one thing from one spot to the end. Like originally the PS4, the way it was built was just like the Xbox One without the ESRAM.
And it was 4 cores too.
Right. At the last second, they was like, before they officially decided to go forward, they were like, we're just gonna go with GDDR5 instead of 3. That gave them the boost. That gave them the power lead up until now.
Somebody gave Sony some inside information.
Right. That happens all over the place.
They had to.
I think that it'll be 2020 is my guess. 2019 at the earliest. I don't think they're gonna announce anything next year at E3 or any of those events. They'll save it and do just like they did for the PS4. They'll announce it at the beginning of the year in its own little conference, and then it'll drop at the end of the year. And I don't think it'll happen for at least another 2.5 years. The reason I say that is because they're going to wait till Vega and Volta have been out fighting each other tooth and nail. They're going to take some derivatives of Zen technology from AMD because that's the cheaper version. And they're going to wait till all those prices come down to a point where they can buy something in bulk and not break their bank. And that's exactly what they did with the PS4. That's why when the Xbox One and the PS4 released, the technology that was in them was already outdated because they waited till it was cheap enough for them to mass produce something. They're going to do the same thing with the next console, and it's going to be 2019 or so before they come out with the version 2 of everything that is out right now. Like they'll have, the next version of the Vegas, and they'll have the Zen, stage 2 or whatever. They'll have all the secondary versions of all the things that are out right now, and Sony is gonna grab on to whatever the most improved version of the current technology is. And I feel like that'll be in about 2 years, 2.5 years.
Well, I tend to I understand what Maslin is saying, but I look at things a little bit different. As he was saying with the original PS4, it was originally 4 cores. It was originally 4 gigabytes of RAM, but somebody told him, say, hey, your competition over here is shit. And so they took it to 8 cores and 8 gigabytes of GDDR5. But in regards to another system, I think these the systems like the Pro and the X is going to give these consoles a little bit longer leg room than most people think. And I will say that because of the Xbox One X. And I say that the reason why I say that is because at some point the Xbox One X is going to become the definitive SDK for all games, meaning that all developers, including third-party developers, will start there and then trickle down across other consoles. And the headway they make on the X will affect not only the Pro, but the PC as well. Whenever you got fixed hardware that can't change, as developers, you are forced to find shortcuts and tricks to pull performance out of that system. Whatever developers find doing that optimizing of the X will not only apply to the X, but it's gonna triculate to the Pro and the PC as well. Even in regards to the hardware technology itself, the things that they did, like at some point you're gonna see PC GPUs with DX12 hardware or dedicated hardware for draw calls built in the GPU. I guarantee you're going to see that at some point. But I think that's going to give these systems a little bit more leg rooms to be out there a little bit longer than what we expect. So 2019, 2020, I don't know, possibly the next 2, maybe the next 3 years. We might. It depends, but I think these systems will be out a little bit longer than what the predecessors was.
Okay, all right. Now here's a question again. To go back to what I was saying originally, you know what I mean? I said, for those of you that have been rocking out with me for a while, my with all my silly and antics and stuff, but my message has never changed. I've been saying the same thing since forever. Okay, and again, so for the next gen, it's not that I always repeat myself. It's just some people that are new to my channel, they don't know. You know what I mean? When I say this, I've always said that you'd be surprised who watches your channel. I literally had 35 subscribers. I choose you not. And I was talking to, and again, I don't really care about this. It's not a big deal to me. But, higher ups and saying Game Informer, whoever, because they just got a kick out of the way that I used to, the way that I talk. It's a little different, my delivery. You know what I mean? But like I said, all this was new to me. I never really cared about who made a game or anything like that. It was never a big deal to me, right? But what was explained to me, he said, more than ever, and whether how big your channel, whether how small your channel, that you will have companies, even whether it's AMD or NVIDIA, Microsoft, Nintendo, Sony, anybody, right? They used to have to pay these research firms all these millions of dollars to go out and take surveys. It's like, but now they can go to YouTube and they can see the everyday gamer from 500,000 subscribers to 2 subscribers to see what they think about their product. I've always said this because this was told to me, and this is how I met some of the people that I know now within the industry. Okay, God, you know what I mean? It makes sense. You know what I mean? And even when I say this, YouTube itself, and you know, they got a lot of rules now. YouTube's ever changing. Maybe another video service after this. I don't know, but this has changed the landscape of gaming. What I mean by that, in the media, right? Because it had the sites such as the IGNs, the Kotaku, and all these big sites that you normally go to www.ig.com. Now their sites or their information now is on YouTube for them to keep up and compete with the everyday gamer. You know what I mean? And I didn't think about it like that back then. But again, I say this to say this. You know what I mean? And you're gonna see what I'm going to mean. I never ever got off on saying I'm an industry insider, right? Because that's not my thing. Well, I forgot my man's name. I think the rat. What's his name? Parrot. I know his name was Parrot something on Twitter.
I know who you're talking about.
But he's all right with me. I know crap and don't like him, but he had this whole thing about him being, the industry insider. He'd go out and stuff, and he used to get mad when things were wrong. And again, it's a lot of things, even right now, that I don't say, because I don't want to. Because I would never put anyone's job in jeopardy.
At risk,
It's not that serious to me. Would it have been easier for me back then to say where I got my information from when I was saying these new consoles was coming? So a lot of people still don't know this to this day. Way before the IGNs, the Kotaku, well, at least about 2.5 to 3 months, I said that both Sony and Microsoft were coming out with new consoles, right? And again, no one believed. And again, what was told to me in this conversation, but not one. It was collectively. A couple of developers in this one conversation, right? And they got to talking about static hardware. Hell, static hardware with I would say a closed environment. You know what I mean? And they explained to me then that you can take a console such as the Xbox One X, well, just the Xbox One period, and you can take a PC with the same specs, so even a little higher, and that one said console will basically dance circles around that PC is because everything in this console is allocated for gaming. They can target that set specs 100% of the time. And I still got scratching my head like, well, okay. He said, I'll give you an example, right? Even though you may have the most, if the Titans were out back then, you have a Titan, most powerful GPU. Just because you have a Titan, all of that right there is not allocated for gaming in the PC. And you can do multiple things with a PC, but it's not just for gaming. But consoles don't have that problem. I'm not saying that a console can outperform a PC, but games are better optimized on console. Bigger to your biggest multiplayer. I'll give you an example. I remember when that Batman Arkham Knight came out, it ran horribly on PC. And the reason why was because on PC you have 1,000 different iterations. You may have a GTX 1080. He have a 1060. You have 18 gigs of RAM. He has 6 gigs of RAM, right? It's a bunch of different variables there, right? Now, what you were saying, I want to touch on what you said about the Xbox One X moving gaming forward, even for its PC. Even if you look on what's crazy, Post, you said that because this was told to me back. I just thought about it. Even though you have so many different people with all these gigs of RAM, if you look at these bigger games and it gives you the lowest specs requirement, a lot of these games are not even using 6 gigs of RAM. I remember when the PS4, I'm gonna tell you a story here. When the PS4 first got announced, 8 gigs of GDDR5 RAM. I'm talking, I said, what the hell was 8 gigs of? I mean, I knew what big RAM was. GDDR5, what the hell was all that? That sounds super powerful, right? So the guy, the certain guy was like, yeah, but developers don't have access to all that. It's not all allocated for games. They actually, you can't even use all that because it will begin to pull back. You see what I mean? So I remember, right? I went out there, my little channel, maybe had like 300 subscribers. And I was like, well, just to troll. Like, yeah, Sony lied. all this RAM is not for gaming and this, that, and the other. And people lost their damn. I had this little itty bitty, just still have a little channel, but I had maybe 300 subscribers back then. And I remember Hip Hop Gamer. This is crazy. I was my right-handed guy, and I don't have a problem with this dude. He went out and said he spoke to his inside sources, and they told him that the PS4 uses at least 7.5 gigs of RAM. I was like, so listen, and I'm not even claiming to be the biggest tech guy, right?
Wow.
So I'm sitting back, I'm just thinking, like, damn, you know, I ain't claiming to be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but they talking about these consoles can record and, you know, even if you do YouTube videos, you know what I mean? You talking about recording gameplay. Well, I think the PS4 at the time was 10 minutes and all this stuff. But, you know, I mean, now it's more, you know, they didn't, you know, optimize a little bit better than, you know, what are you doing? But, and also, too, what people don't understand, that even if you have a PC or OS, Windows is a system hog. You know, I'm using a lot of resources.
You got a lot of services running in the background.
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, hit Control Alt Delete. You see what we're talking about, right? And I said, even with the PS4, they use it's a system hog. You know what I mean? Yeah. But again, like I said, I had this very, very small channel. I wasn't trying to expose nobody, and I was like, so look, it was crazy, right? And I don't have a problem with this guy. He said people in the industry avoid that guy like a plague. So he's a fanboy. He's not a journalist. Now again, I'm bugging. Now listen, they in there bugging. He walks around with this big ass belt, scaring the hell out of people. Like what the hell? You know what I mean? But it was crazy as hell. But then he went on and he interviewed the guy from Dice that does the sound from Battlefield 1. And then he even said, when I said my video was like, you really can't use more than 6.5 gigs and it'll pull back. You know what I mean? But again, I'm not trying to get credit. This was told to me. It doesn't really matter because I'm not trying to be a techie guy. You know what I mean? But going to what you said about, you know, the Xbox One maybe to move things forward, even on the PC side, just because of that such of the high memory bandwidth. They said it was about the same as with a GTX 1080 or something. That's huge. And then listen, and to be fair, console gaming does hold PC back. You know what I mean? Because you know it has. You know what I mean? But that's huge. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't understand all the hate for the Xbox. I really don't understand it. To me, it makes no sense. Why PC guys? Because we're not talking about a personal computer, Mac versus app. We're talking about. It reminds me, we're talking about Sega versus Nintendo. You know, or Sega versus TurboGrafx. What does your personal computer, your PC, have to do? I don't understand that, man. I really, really don't, man.
You know what? I said a lot of people don't understand, man, that you know, we understand that the PC is head honcho. I'm not taking another. It's a lot of hardware configurations there that you have that you can use to brute force your way to do any type of settings, 4K, 8K, whatever, depending on what hardware you have. You also can turn certain graphical options on and off to get 4K 60 and stuff like that. But when it comes to console, if people don't think that developers take what they learn from a console perspective, as far as the development environment, what they learn, if they don't think that they apply that across PC, even from a hardware perspective, with like AMD and stuff like that, if they don't take what they learned from Microsoft and Sony in regards to the customization that they're doing to the chips, depending on what the contracts say, and apply that to they GPUs that's on the market for the P, you're crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, because even if you think about like anybody who follows AMD, they have notoriously not been competition for Intel for years.
Sir.
For years, which is why all Intel chips are too damn high.
Yes, sir.
But like all of the interim processes that they've done just from like the processing, even the FP16, like all of that is based on derivative of the 360 architecture, how it does crosstalk. All of that's the same exact thing. It's just built in math form. And all of that was from a console space. AMD took what they were seeing in that space, created their own math process around it, and derived their own version of crosstalk, which is the FP16, doubles everything by putting it in one single command. That's pretty much how that works. And that's all derived from a console. So as these consoles go into their later stages, like the X right now, all these games that we're seeing that are 4K, some 60, some have these, ultra settings at this, region, or they'll have this set of processes that are taken directly from PC architecture, vice versa. They're going to move this over here. Like, all that stuff is derived because as these consoles get older, they learn new processes because these are fixed hardware, like you were talking about. All of this is one single hardware, and they learn how to utilize it better over time. So you got to think, all the games that we're seeing now that are looking crazy, they gonna look garbage in 3 years when
just look at
when games designed solely for these things, like just specifically to push these, right?
Yeah, the 360 later on in the year, towards the end of its cycle. Look at the PS3 and the 360. Man, them games was looking way better than the ones that was out when the system first came out. And to elaborate on what you said, Z, about system resources and all that when it comes to these PC GPUs and things, a lot of people tend to forget teraflops are theoretical. All right. So I can have a 10 teraflop GPU. But depending on how optimized my system is, how much resourcing and what's going on with the system, I can only be using maybe 30, 40, 50, 60% of those 10 teraflops. You know what I'm saying? So even though I got a 10 teraflop, I'm not getting 100% of those 10 teraflops. You know what I'm saying? And that's why a lot of people do dual GPUs and have to even when they take a card that got 10, if some people hit 10 teraflop, you should be able to do 4K 60 maxed out ultra, and then somebody do maxed out ultra on a specific game and it chugs or the frame rate drop. That's because even though that GPU has 10 teraflops, doesn't mean it's going to use 100% of those teraflops all the time. And I think that's one thing Microsoft was aiming for with the Xbox One, even though it was 1.31 teraflops. Their main goal with that was, even though we got this small teraflop count, we're going to try to utilize as much as that teraflops as we can. So we got 1 teraflop, we're going to try to get 90 or 95% utilization out of that teraflop. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Like teraflops, basic explanation of what a teraflop is, because people throw that out but don't know what it means. Basic explanation is a teraflop is how many compute units you have and how many processes they can do per second. So in this case, you have 40 compute units in the 40 active compute units. You have 44 total, but 40 active, and they do 128 floats per second. So that's 128 operations per second, more or less. Layman's terms. You multiply that by how fast they can do it, which is the clock speed.
1172.
Right, 1172. You get 6 million some change.
6,640,000.
Right. So like basically what they're doing is each individual core is not going to be doing something all at the same time, because that's not how games are designed. Like the ones that are designed for AI utilization and core programming, if you're in a scene where there's no AI on screen, those aren't doing anything. They may be allocated to something different, but they're not specifically doing the process that they were set for. So during that time, instead of most places moving the information to a different source, Microsoft has set it up so now that unutilized core is now using a blank draw space. So it's basically using itself to hold information for whatever you're going to do in the area you're in, as opposed to holding information that's not being utilized right now. And they've designed the entire chip to do that within itself. So the way architecture works for a lot of these SoCs and these small APUs is they take the information that's coming in and they make it a revolving door, and they just make that door spin faster. So instead of stuff escaping and not getting to where it's supposed to be faster, it stays in that revolving door and gets shot out just when it needs to. And that's how these processes work. Like basic overall is everything Microsoft has done with this SoC is to make sure that every single core and every single operation is being used as best it can in order to minimize the strain on the system. So, like you were saying about one computer and one console with the same exact hardware, the console will perform better in a game,
above its
right?
weight,
because it's not doing all the processes that the computer is doing, and everything is segmented. So even the little stuff like operating system and background recording, that's all segmented. In a computer, the computer doesn't, it's drawing from wherever it can get the power from, as opposed to in a console is drawing from a direct space where it knows that instruction is.
It knows what it has. It knows how much it has. Yeah.
So it's gonna happen. Like the Xbox One X is built to make sure that everything that it does is done as efficiently as possible to help itself utilize its own power. The problem with the Pro and why we're not seeing a bunch of games that utilize the power that's in the Pro, even though it's basic and just overclocked, the reason is because it's still designed the exact same way, where you have to ask the machine to process this command. You have to go to that command and process it. The Xbox is making it so the system will access that command even if you don't ask. And that is what we're seeing with the Xbox One X.
Did I say this? Last question. We can close the show with this. I remember Sony put out a statement last year and saying that the PS4 Pro is in direct competition with the PC, something like that, whatever the case may be. Do you think the Xbox One X could maybe, for some gamers that wanted more performance or console guys, will stop them? Well, nothing that really matters from or buying a PC. Or do you think the Xbox One X with its performance will hold a lot of console gamers over, or even because again, there are, like I said, we've seen the surveys. A lot of people's PCs don't even outperform the standard PS4 and the Xbox One. That's, again, it is what it is. Do you think it will even make even some PC guys, jump ship and just get the Xbox One X, or stop some console guys from going over and say, you know what, I'm tired, I want 1080p 60 or whatever the case. I'm gonna get me a PC. What do you think? Do you think the X is this stopgap system? How you say this hybrid? It's not hybrid, but this system that's going to appeal to some PC guys that they can come back with a console, or some console guys that are tired of whatever the case, with the Xbox One standard or slim or whatever the case, or the PS4 has to offer, and stuff won't make them jump ship. Like, what do you think?
I think that the Xbox One is more of it's more. It does what they wanted the PS4 Pro to do. It gives people an actual reason to stay on consoles as opposed to jump to PC. I don't think it'll pull PC people back to consoles, because once you invest in that system, right, that ecosystem, those type of games, once you invest in that, you're pretty much all in. It's very rare you drop back, but it'll prevent people from going there because they won't have to. I think the Pro, as a stopgap measure, wasn't good enough. That's why people are buying the more base PS4s than PS4 Pro, even though the PS4 Pro now is getting cheaper and you can find it for cheaper, but it's not doing much. So people aren't willing to pay that extra bit. But I think the Xbox One X will stop people from saying, who are like, all right, I got to spend $700 to $1,000 to get a PC that does about what this piece of machinery does. Not exactly, but it doesn't give me all the bells and whistles that this piece of machinery does. But I would have to do it, and then now I have to, worry about, do I need to upgrade in a couple years, so on and so on. So I think the people who are on console who would consider jumping to PC because they wanted more power, I think the Xbox One X is a better stopgap to keep them on console than it will than the PS4 Pro is to keep them on console.
You know what my perspective is, man. With this whole PC thing, I don't even understand. Look, man. Look, it's PCs. We know PC is the head honcho, right? And, you know, it's powerful systems out there that can pretty much run any game at 4K 60 with all the settings turned up. And then you got them systems out there that can run at 4K 60 if they go in there and they make some changes to the settings to get their system to perform at the level that where they feel optimized. In regards, you have people who believe, you have people who don't believe, then you have people who sitting on the fence. The people who believe, such as I, is gonna go have the console already pre-ordered. You have people who sitting on the fence that's gonna wait till their friends get it, go over their friend's house and play it, and then be like, go out the door and the GameStop and try to find them a system. The disbelievers, some of them, not all of them, will become a believer because some people are just stubborn. But in regards to the system, PC players are going to stay PC players. That's just what they love. Their customization. They love being able to have the different variations of hardware and stuff like that.
I'm talking about the ones that, you know, I'm not talking about the ones that play the Dota guys. I'm talking about the ones that got the PC just for the multiplats.
I mean, yeah, they will. They're going to come over. They're not going to leave PC, but they will have an Xbox One X. I guarantee you that. And even some of these Sony fans who they're gonna have it too. I guarantee you. Look, I know we put a lot into Microsoft marketing, but in today's age of social media, word of mouth travels faster. And I guarantee you, because it's us. It's gonna be us on these YouTube channels in disarray or showing, man, look at this game. Look at this here. That's why people don't go to the IGNs and GameSpot no more. Why I need to go there when I can see an actual gamer on YouTube playing the actual game himself and get my own perspective. That word of mouth is gonna sell that console, because when people see it and it lives up to everything that Microsoft said, whether it's 4K 30, 60 or anything like that, frame rates is not even an issue. I don't even think Microsoft brought frame rate into this. It was always about being able to put out a 4K image. And at one point, people said it was going to take years for consoles to reach or put out 4K type of content, and we're about to do it in a couple of months.
You know what's even crazier is that at the if you go back to the beginning of this generation, Microsoft was talking about 60 FPS. They didn't say nothing about resolution. They were talking about 60 FPS. The media went with 1080p over 60 FPS, and now we're in a resolution war. Right, we're now in a resolution war. Like, literally, if you go back, they're like 60 FPS on all your games. Like, I was watching the reveal the other day, and I was like, it's crazy how much their messaging was towards FPS. They were worried about getting you to play your games at a higher speed and it playing the best it could. But then all of a sudden, it went to, no, 1080p, we need 1080p. 1080p makes you a better gamer. So everybody went with that because it was easy for Sony to achieve 1080p, but nobody was worried about whether or not we were getting 60 FPS. Now we're in resolution war. As opposed to just making the games play better, they're in a resolution war, as opposed to graphically we can make these games look ridiculous, but we'll have them at 60 FPS, which is where they should have went. But the media, having built up this interim, you know, of everything has to be a higher resolution, brought us to the point where we are. And as such, things are designed for that exact thing, which is why all the engines now are highly GPU bound, because it's all about pushing graphics and resolution,
more pixels and better resolution,
right? As opposed to speed, which is what all the games that were CPU bound were about.
Not only I want to do some too while we got people tuning in, because I keep hearing this in like on forums and things like that, and the naysayers always bring up this: everything was supposed to have been uncompromised 4K 60. Microsoft did not say that. Phil Spencer did not say that. actually it was Albert Pinello who said that in a certain in an interview he did. I forgot who it was with, but he did an interview and he wasn't saying Uncle Promise 4K 60 on every game. What he was saying in the context of what he was saying is that every Xbox One game that is either 900p or 1080p 30 or 60 will be able to run uncompromised 4K at those respective frame rates. So if it was 900p 30 frames per second on Xbox One, it'll be able to run uncompromised 4K 30 on the Xbox One S or X, or if it was 1080p 60 frames per second, it'll be able to run 4K 60 frames per second uncompromised on the Xbox One X. And people took that and totally flipped out what he said and missed what he was saying in regards to the context, in regards to the Xbox One game versus them running on the Xbox One X. So I just want to correct people on that. It was not on every game. Okay.
All right. Well, I guess, like I said, with that being said, just to touch over just the beginning part of of today's show, Microsoft's Xbox One X, the hot chips thing. So if you had to put it at a number, what would you say maybe it's adding the CPU with the GPU? You know what I mean? Because it is slightly more powerful than 65. It was like 6.1 or some CPU. 6.2. I'm actually sharing my screen with you guys here. Yeah. Who there? Share, present. I remember them doing something. So it's actually overperforming what they initially thought. The Xbox One X. This was like a few months before E3. They just make my screen a little bigger. Can you guys see my screen post?
Yeah, we can see you. You good?
You did this billions, 16 million compute units. Let me ask you a question. How many CUs does the PS4 Pro have?
36.
36, I think.
Yeah, 36. I want to say.
And the original PS4 has how many CUs? The original PS4.
Oh shit! 8.
Hold on,
18.
8 and yeah,
16, somewhere in there.
18 or something. And the Xbox One has 12, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me see. Let me go here. We have 12.
Like each individual unit is always comprised with redundancy. So, like technically, the Xbox One X has 44, but one will be a lame duck and won't work. One, and then if they have a failure rate within a certain quadrant, they'll use the other ones to make up for it. So technically, the Xbox One X has 44. If they get to the point where they have a production redundancy where they're not getting a bunch of lame cores, they could technically turn other ones on.
And that's all depends on the software.
Yeah, well, it depends on software and manufacturing processes.
Okay, those get over 2 gigabytes per channel. Jesus, it's a lot of this console has a lot of goddamn memory.
Yep, they put some extra banks in there. They actually put some extra extra channels on the CPU too. Added extra channels, so they add extra channels for data to move in and out the CPU. So man, extra banks. They the decrease in latency by 20%. Man, that thing fast, man.
And that's why you see a lot of these a lot of the games that have high encoding levels, like that's why they can do the 4K streaming, because they have a lot of latency bandwidth that talks fast, so the streaming won't drop the core operation, because all it's doing is sending a process that says this video output to this stream, and it's leaving a stream that's straight through a pipeline. So instead of going through a bunch of different pipes to end up to the end live stream, is going from one direct path that's allocated strictly for that. and it's going at a speed that's allowing the rest of it to not slow down. That's why they can do 4K streaming, because they built that into the chip. Again, they made this entire chip about efficiency of each individual process working in harmony to boost the next process that's coming behind it, as opposed to going to try to fetch a piece of information, bring that back, process that information, send that back. And that redundancy, they got rid of that redundancy using all the processing lanes that they built into the chip.
All right. Okay. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcel Simon says, Z, such BGS T down and kick crab call. Jesus. Shout out to everybody in the live stream. If you didn't catch this little get together from the beginning, just rewind it back. A lot of information. Hit the like button. Again, if you want to get down with the broadband bullies, we got my man Poster who put out his first video. We get the link to his channel right now. I'm gonna leave that down below. And my man, the real man, and the real masculine. You know, what I mean, we over here working. If you want to get down with the broad band bullies, we're looking for new talent, guys for podcasting, other separate shows, live streaming with the games, whole bunch of stuff. Like, to get behind and support us, for us, by us. You know what I mean? A lot of the stuff that we do, like even YouTube, we don't make. I don't make any money.
No, I don't make any money off YouTube.
No. You know, I don't know, for whatever reason I'm not able to. They don't monetize me, but it's no big deal. I actually do it for the culture.
Oh, I know what that is. They switched it.
Yeah.
Also, Alex, you can get this work whenever you want, bro.
Okay.
He was talking real greasy, and trust me, you can take as many L's from the bully core as you want. They all bend the knee to the bullies. All of them. You have already been there.
Talk about it.
Don't make me lay you down. Because you already bent the knee to post up. Don't make me lay you down.
Hey, listen, I want to say this right here. Listen, man, your boy Nick Jenga, I got an eye for talent, man. I'm trying to tell you, we over here. I got a mean crew, man. I'm trying to tell you, I got a strong 5 any day of the week, bro. We over here working, man. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, thank you all for rocking out with us. Tonight we're gonna be doing Xbox Beastfire about 9 p.m. or so.
It'll be a great show.
A great show again, and then of course Thursday the multiplayer podcast is always crazy, and then Friday we do the debates. You know what I mean? I'm trying to set that up right now behind the scenes. Thank you for rocking out with the show. You'd be so kind to hit the like button. Again, like I said, my man Post Up and my man the real masculine came up with the CUDA cores today. I'll leave the link down below to the article which we were talking about. But again, just from a gaming aspect of things, thank you, Maya. I think just from a gaming aspect of things, if you're a console game, if you're just in the gaming period, you should be happy. Again, I think it's this new hardware. You know, forget all the fanboy stuff. I remember I was really, really excited for the Pro. It didn't live up to my expectations, and because of, Sony with the resolution thing, the games are looking better graphically. This gives you a higher resolution. But with the X there, for those of you guys that say that you bought the PS4 or for the multiplats, don't be a hypocrite now, because now the X does have the better version of the multiplats. But it is what it is. I still have my issues about the exclusives and stuff. Actually, I have a video about that. I will be going back to church tomorrow, so pray for me because I'm ripping my new one. But anyway, thank you for rocking out with us today. We catch you guys later on the Xbox Beastfire. We out of here.
Peace.
Bacon, 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 bacon.